bastard.
Son of a bitch.
Well,
I was cleaning up my desk. It was good.
Lord. Funny. So what do you guys think? Should we go?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I have no choice.
Yeah, no shit, right? I don't know what's a good name for this episode. Close but no cigar. Who the hell knows?
It wasn't close.
It wasn't close.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, this is a game that I can't think of a good phrase for it, but it's a turning point. You know, I think we saw a lot of things in the past two games. We went up against the two best teams in each conference, and we held up reasonably well. But there were things that just, you know, this dysfunction, this disorganization in the team, and the fact that they keep on shooting themselves in the foot is it's getting old, and it hasn't stopped, and it hasn't gotten any better, you know, except maybe Aaron's not fumbling the ball as much as he used to, but like things just aren't improving, and they have 8 games to turn it around. And I keep on hearing, well, we're gonna, you know, this is the week we got to do it. Well, you know what? You're running out of opportunities. So
I'm so sick and tired of that, to be honest. It's like, oh wait, you know, they're gonna go on a run. They went on a run this year. They won 8 in a row this, and I'm like, we got to stop that shit. We need to get it to the point where we start off a season like the Rams, or start off the season like a Patriots, 7-2, 8-1, or whatever, instead of this bullshit where you dig yourself in such a hole that you have to get out. It grows tiresome, and I have to imagine the morale of the team, you know, gets beat up and all that. But I don't know.
And that's why I think like this game and this episode, like the only thing that comes to mind for me is turning point. You know, is this when we get to the end of the season and, you know, we're sitting there trying to figure out what we're going to do, or I should say Gutekunst, you know, what they're going to do. Does he just realize that this is not where we want to be? I mean, last 20 games were, you know, 7, 12, and 1. I
read somewhere that in the last 50 games were 24, 25, and 1.
Yeah.
That's fucking pathetic. That's just, think about it right there. That's average. That's definition of average.
Everything about it. Top to bottom.
And I had almost forgotten that in 2015, that was the season where I think we started out like 6 or 7-0.
6-0, yep.
Yep. And then the whole, you know, the whole damn thing fell apart after that, and we couldn't, like, the offense fell apart, and that was the start of when Rodgers' play fell off, and they couldn't get anything done. And then he came back better in 16 and 17. He broke his collarbone, but I had forgotten that he went through that pretty long stretch in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just, and I subscribed to Bob McGinn.
Yep.
I actually renewed it today. I subscribed to it last year, but I hadn't subscribed to it this year. He's kind of curmudgeonly, but he's good, and he's been doing it for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you know, he's the one guy who will criticize Rodgers and put it out in paper.
Yeah.
Put it on print, if you will. And not many people are doing it. And Rodgers, if you look at his statistics over the past, I'll say 3 seasons, they're pretty average.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's weird is that the rest of the league, we'll say in the past 5 years, if you will, 5-6 years, the rest of the league, you know, teams are improving their efficiencies with getting easier yardage, and quarterbacks are getting, I don't know if they're getting better, but it's like that curve is going up, and the Packers curve is going diametrically the other way, with supposedly the best quarterback, and it makes no sense. And that's why I made that comment where it's like, you know, how can it be this difficult to do even easy offensive work with supposed best quarterback in the league? I still don't understand it.
Yep.
And I'm baffled, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No team works harder for yardage than the Packers does.
Or points.
Yardage and points, yeah. It's just, I mean, hell, they've changed the league and the rules to favor the offense every single year. They just change things even more and more. And it's the Packers are seem to be the only team that is not benefiting from this, or either not learning from it or something like that. It's just very strange. It doesn't compute, but here we are, right?
Well, it computes where I think we just need a change. I mean, we're getting to that point.
I think we've been to that point, and that's like I have to imagine that in the podcast in the past, I've been calling for McCarthy for
Yes, you have
3 years. From
Yeah.
2015, that was the year when it just. And I've been more negative. I know that in the past, and I'm trying to look at some positives, but and there are some positives. They got some MVS. What's his Martavius?
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
He looks fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And so does Jair Alexander. Looks good. Aaron Jones looks good. They got definitely some bright spots, but then they just have this dearth of talent in other places, and it's hard to compute. And then special teams is a fucking disaster on this team, and has been ever since McCarthy took over. It's embarrassing how special teams are in this team. And they say you get what you emphasize. McCarthy always says that. And
what does he emphasize?
He emphasizes nothing about special teams. He emphasizes, fundamentals and beating your guy. And I don't think he emphasizes bad things, but
yeah, like hit the kicker, but don't get caught.
But that's all. I mean, the accountability has to start with the special teams coach. And I guess to that point, McCarthy needs to pull the trigger and can Zook. Zook was a stupid hire. dumb hire. So it doesn't surprise me that the special teams have continued to be bad. Was it 2014? Just the NFC Championship. That's when special teams basically lost us the Super Bowl. They gave up the fake field goal, and then the Bostic thing with the onside kick. So that's when he canned Mike McCarthy canned Slocum, right?
Yep. After
that season, then he brought in Zook, and it's like, you're firing this guy and you're bringing in someone who is no better, if not worse. Zook he does nothing for me. And they could treat special teams as a weapon. Like the Patriots treat special teams as a weapon. Good teams do. Packers do not. They treat special teams as like, oh, we got to do this thing,
It's the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of looking at it. I agree. And it's hurting them. It really is. And it's embarrassing on some levels, I didn't see it, but apparently Josh Jones was offside on the opening kickoff.
Yes, he was.
I mean, what the hell is that?
And you can't even take off until the ball's kicked. So how are you offsides? That's the undisciplined part that just aggravates me. It maddens me. Like we're just talking about, like we just want to, enjoy life and chill out. But then when you have professional football players who cannot get themselves onside for a kickoff, it's like, what the fuck? I mean, there's just no other way to. It's just so undisciplined.
Yeah, and then the running into the kicker, even though that was just of the 5-yard variety or whatever. But yeah, it's just being aware of the situation, if you will, because it was 4th and whatever. It was like 4th and 20 something.
4th and 21.
So you didn't even have to go near the guy.
No, that was
and this guy's going in there for like the hero move. I'm like, I don't know. That was dumb.
Yeah, and then they're in the end zone and they run it out again.
I saw that.
Are you kidding me?
The first thing I thought was, that's Mike McCarthy giving a big fuck you to everybody else, saying, I can make this work. Watch this.
That's insane. That's just flat out crazy talk. I don't even. My God.
I think at some point you look at Rodgers too, and it's like he's constantly going deep. They had second and 4, and he threw a 40-yard pass to the boundary, and I'm going. I could see it coming. Right when he dropped back, I knew he wasn't going to do it. At some point, and they're running for a while. I was thinking, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And the play calling here, this, that, and the other. But I was watching on that particular play. They ran a guy across the middle, 5-6 yards. So there was something there, and he doesn't look there. That's on Rodgers. That's not on McCarthy.
There's plenty of blame to go around for Rodgers, and I think he has to be accountable and that's not happening right now. I mean, he had his press conference yesterday. He was in there for 2 minutes and he walked out. And didn't take accountability for anything. When
this guy just got $98 million guaranteed, and his play has dropped off.
So for $98 million guaranteed, they're getting a 60% completion rate. They're getting 4 fumbles. They're getting 4
penalties. I think with
where they ran the play clock down to 0. This is what they're getting. And I mean, if you look at his career stats, since 2010, it went up significantly. His rating, his completion percentage. I mean, he was at 68.3 in 2011. 2012 at 67.2, 2013 66.6, 2014 65.6, 2015 he was at 60. That was a bad year for him. 2016 he was back up to 65.7. Last year 64.7, and this year he's at an all-time career low of 60.6.
Jesus.
And I mean, so the blame could go around to McCarthy, obviously, because his team keeps on going out and is undisciplined and dysfunctional. That's on McCarthy. But the offensive dysfunction has to be on your quarterback, who is not seeing the field, who goes for the home run on every single play. It
is odd. He looks like he's got the jitters too. He's bolted. I mean, look, he's under pressure. It is pretty much a joke. I mean, Brady's got all day back there. I think he got sacked once. But he gets rid of the ball. He gets rid of the ball. You're right. But he also does have all day. He's rarely, if ever, under pressure. I mean, the Packers have no pass rush. That's plain as day.
Right, but McDaniels calls a game plan that fits every person on that offense to a T. And they go by it. So I guess this is an interesting point, because it's like, so Brady could try to hit the home run like Rodgers does all the time, but Brady throws, like you said, he's getting the ball quick and he's throwing little hitches, and he's throwing 5-6 yard passes. And Brady running backs.
Yeah, I was going to say, the one thing that you can tell about Brady, I don't think Brady gives a rat's ass about stats. He knows he wants championships. Period. End of story.
Right.
Rodgers, maybe there is something to him, changing play calls at the line with running or whatever, because maybe it is McCarthy. I don't know. But if Brady, it just, to me, with my own 2 eyes, if Brady needed to run the ball 40 times a game, he'd do it. No question. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't care. Mm-hmm. And if you put that over on the other side, I think Rodgers would be incapable of doing that. Mm-hmm. And that's just a difference in personality, a difference in, I don't know,
I think his britches got too big. I mean, I think he's at this point where he thinks he's the best quarterback in the league, and he has a coach that he doesn't see eye to eye with right now, and their philosophical differences are obviously very staggering. And he's just going out there and he's given the freedom at the line of scrimmage, because they're in an RPO pretty much every single down. He reads the defense.
Yeah. And I'm sure McCarthy lets him do whatever he wants out there. He'll call a play, but he's letting Rodgers to control everything.
But when you watch him come off the field, and it's funny because the TV this year, for some reason, you don't see it as much when Rodgers comes off the field and that interaction with him and McCarthy. But there were a few times this year where Rodgers was coming off the field, and McCarthy's looking at him like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's, and that's the problem right here. We have, talent-wise, we have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you expect Hall of Fame production from him, and we're not getting that. So there's one of 2 ways to handle this. You get rid of the quarterback, or you get rid of the head coach. And they're obviously not going to get rid of Rodgers, because financially that'll strap them with dead money for years. Mm-hmm. So the only other option is you get rid of the head coach, you start over, you clear the coaching staff, and you start completely fresh, and you get a new perspective in here, and you have the time, and you get Aaron involved with the hiring, with somebody that will get along with him, that has the same philosophical idea of what an offense should be. And you have this harmonious little, rainbows and sunshine deal where they all get along and they hug and they win Super Bowls. So,
yeah. Well, I think there's even this misleading, even with that, because I think right now, if Rodgers, think about if they got it more 50-50 in terms of pass to run or run to pass or whatever, they would be dangerous as shit.
Yep.
They would be really dangerous because Aaron Jones, obviously he's a real deal. I mean, it's plain as day, but they're still like 75-25 pass to run. And I think, maybe McCarthy does, or is pushing for more 50-50 and Rodgers is just like, nope, I want to do this. And if that's true, that's killing the offense.
Let's take the last play of before halftime when it was like 3rd and 1 or whatever, and Rodgers audibled the bootleg, and the Patriots were showing an all man. I mean, they were coming all in. They were giving a maximum pressure, and he audibles to a bootleg. Now, what in your right mind thinks that is? Because you could see Lindsey looking back at him, and he was. They were talking to each other. They were communicating, and they were communicating the block on the line of what they wanted to do. So there was a change in play. Whatever that play came in to be, it did not end up that play. It was something that Rodgers decided to audible out of, and he seems to be doing that a whole hell of a lot. But this is the problem: is that okay? We talk about accountability, so everybody's talked about it coming into this year that this would be a whole new team. It hasn't. So I don't care who Aaron Rodgers is at this point. If you're Mike McCarthy, you sit his ass down and you tell him this is how it is. If you don't like it, go home. Go home. If McCarthy had balls, if he had a backbone, he would tell him flat out, this is what you're going to do, or you go home.
Yeah, you do wonder about that. I mean, obviously he's the $98 million, whatever, 100 and whatever $1 million guy. So you're tied to. I'm
all about accountability, though.
I hear you.
We're paying him $98 million. I'm expecting $98 million production. So, and we're not getting that. So
not getting close.
We're not even getting close to that. We could go out and pick up Sam Bradford to get this type of production. So,
God, that's unbelievably. It's true, but it's unbelievable. So odd.
All right. Are we going to do this, or is Sandy going to go to bed on us?
What? What are you talking about?
We're doing this. We're just going right into it.
Oh, so we didn't have like a starting?
No.
Usually we start. Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, are we not recording? I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's recording, but it's going to be a little weird. Okay. I mean, I guess because we didn't have a start.
Weird though.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
You know what we're doing? We're audibling and we're not telling anybody. So you're McCarthy and we're Rodgers.
That is epic.
I mean, because I had this plan, guys,
and we mucked it all up.
And you didn't do the plan, and everybody's going to ask me after the game, so what was with that plan? And I'll be like, that wasn't the plan.
Welcome to the Packers world.
Yeah, and you'll be like, I gave these guys $98 million, and I'm getting like $2 million in production. Nice. That's funny. No, we kind of ad-lib this, which, all kidding aside, I think that's one thing that we tend to do pretty well, is that we just kind of put out what's out there, what we think. I mean, we obviously
it's cool.
Break down the X's and O's, but I think that's one thing that we do that's pretty cool, because I haven't listened to a ton of podcasts, sports podcasts in the past few months, but there's some I used to listen to, and they're just, I don't want to say they're too rigid, but it's like, it's still just football. You can be fun, and you got to, this is the thing that's very important. You got to be able to make fun of yourself at all times. You have to.
Right.
And if you can't, you pull them in your office and you say, go home.
Exactly.
No doubt that's a big thing. Looking at positivity though, my dad, he always, gives me shit he goes, you're way too negative. And I go, I do find myself at times, obviously being pretty negative. I think I've done a slightly better job post E. coli, but one thing that has been pretty impressive the past 2 weeks is, I mean, they've gone on the road and they damn near beat. You could say the Rams are the best team in the league. They damn near beat them, but they had that crucial mistake right at the end. that mucked it up. It was the fumble and the problem on special teams, but they hung in there on the road. And then with New England, I mean, they hung in for 3 quarters on the road, and basically the best team in the last decade, if not more than decade. Did you see their record at home under Belichick and Brady?
Yeah.
I fell out of my chair. That was like 108-4 or something like that. It was some obscene record, but then you're kind of going, well, it makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact you could hang with them and not be playing that well, mind you, for 3 quarters was pretty good. I mean, after they lost that fumble, you could tell the team was just like,
I don't think New England was playing their best either.
No, they weren't. Brady didn't play that well. Brady didn't play much. I don't think he even played better. He played about as well as Rodgers.
I think that there is something to be said for the Packers seem to be able to, and maybe this is just everybody in the NFL, right? You kind of play to the level of your opponent. Mm-hmm. So,
yep.
They held in there, but when push came to shove, both were an L.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I mean, the one thing to remember about New England was that they were without Rob Gronkowski.
Yep.
And they were without Sony Michel. So they were without 2 of their best offensive weapons. And what did they do? They adapted. Mm-hmm. If the Packers were without Devontae Adams and let's see, another receiver, we'll say Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, I think they would be really screwed. Mm-hmm. I don't think they'd be able to do anything. But the Patriots, right. They scheme and they find ways to do it. I mean, hell, they ran 2 trick plays in one game. And part of me is going, well, if you need to run trick plays, that's because you don't know how, you have to run trick plays to beat a team. But I'm like, son of a bitch, they don't care. They just want to win.
Yeah. Right? You know what? Nobody's gonna say, well, they wouldn't have made it into the playoffs if they didn't have that trick play in week 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, and you said too that the Patriots just adapt. They just know how to win. And we did have that. I mean, think about 2010 when we won the Super Bowl. I mean, that team was just struck with injury after injury after injury. I mean, 15 guys were on IR. I mean, literally like a quarter of your roster was being put out for the year. And they brought guys, they funneled guys in, and they filled their roles, and they adapted, and they won a Super Bowl because of it. So that's what makes this really hard to take. Is I've personally seen this team adapt in the past, but they just can't seem to adapt now. And I think now the difference between now and 2010 is the talent. The disparity of talent.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
So grotesque that it's not even close.
No, you're exactly right. The disparity in talent, because I was just thinking while you were talking about that, it's like Rodgers had Greg Jennings. He had Jermichael Finley for about half the year, but he went on IR. So he had Greg Jennings, Jermichael Finley for a bit, Donald Driver, Jordy Nelson, and James Jones. I mean, they were loaded at receiver. Mm-hmm. They had a fantastic offensive line. I can't remember exactly on running back, but their defense was really on the come for sure. They had Charles Woodson. They had Clay Matthews in his second year, and he was emerging as a huge weapon. Ryan Pickett, B.J. Raji. They were. You're right.
Colin Jenkins.
Yep, they were loaded with talent. You're right. They could overcome that. There is a humongous dearth of talent on this roster. I'm looking at guys. I'm like, you know who's been absolutely invisible? I'm trying to think of.
Nick Perry.
Done it. Yes. My word, I haven't seen that guy do anything or ever get his name called.
Do you know what I feel like he's doing right now? Because
giving up? I don't know.
Not so much that. It's just he's playing conservative. He's playing for himself because he gets I can't remember. It's somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 per game that he's on the active roster. So whenever he's active on game day, he gets that bonus. So, in years past, he's been obviously banged up. He's been injured. So this year he came off of an ankle injury. I mean, he was hurt the whole preseason. He had ankle surgery before training camp, so maybe he's slow out of the gate, but I see no effort. I mean, last night I saw him on the ground more than I've seen him his whole career. This is a guy that just doesn't get knocked down to the ground. He's
a huge. I was going to say
he's physically imposing.
He's a huge man, dude.
But he's hugely strong. I mean, he's football strong at the point of attack. Guys don't knock him down on his ass, and he was knocked down on his ass multiple times last night. And speaking of that, knocking down on their ass, Clay Matthews got knocked down by a 190-pound running back.
I saw that.
Nuts.
He came flying through the right up in the middle there, and he just God.
Think about that. I mean, that's a 260-pound guy coming 95%, and this 195 or 190-pound running back lights him up.
Yeah, not good. There's 3 specific players on the team right now that they're really dragging this roster down. They're all vets. Randall Cobb, Nick Perry, and Clay Matthews. The amount of money they're sucking up and the amount of production you're getting there is the disparity it's like a travesty right now. With, like I said, it's just for the production versus cap number and all that. Man, Randall Cobb. I mean, I can't honestly remember, but it's like his first few years pretty darn good. He's never been a speed demon, but he's been quick, shifty. That guy, I'd love to see his stats for the year. Does he even have 200 receiving yards on the year?
He's somewhere around there. Let me see. He's damn close.
But I mean, that's just shit. You know, he's done. Is what I'm saying. Cobb is done.
Cobb has 258 yards on 26 receptions, 1 touchdown, averaging 9.9 yards per catch, and 51.6 yards a game.
Yikes. But Cobb, I hate to say it. I mean, you look at the veterans they've kept around too long. Cobb was done a couple years ago. Now, you got to have guys to fill your roster. I get that. You can have guys who are average to above average. So I'm not going to sit there and say you got to jettison the whole team. But the Perry extension, that was a desperation move. The Perry draft pick was not a draft pick. Not a good draft pick. I remember when they drafted him, and I go, he's not a 3-4 outside linebacker.
Right.
That was a mismatched draft pick and a panic extension. And that was Ted. That's straight up Ted's fault. That was a Ted. Clay Matthews, he either should have taken a huge pay cut or he should have been traded or cut.
Yep.
Okay. So the reason that I asked you guys if we were starting is because I wanted to. I've been itching all week to ask you guys all right, assuming the season's done, which I think there's almost no shot. We need both to turn around the effort and have a bunch of luck in order to make the playoffs.
Sure.
So let's pretend it's just not even a possibility. What are the top 5 things that you guys each would do? And let's go back and forth. Start with Andy. What are the top 5 things you would do in the off season, or even starting now, that you would do to change the prospects for next year?
Okay. Yeah, it is a good question. I think, if we say the season's done, if that's kind of the stipulation, I mean, that's McCarthy does have to go. Something has to give there.
Okay. So that's one.
Yeah. And I mean, if McCarthy goes, that basically means his whole staff goes, which could mean Pettine goes. I don't know.
Interesting.
Because whoever comes in might want to bring in their whole damn, they might want to clean the whole damn thing. So McCarthy's got to go. If we're talking, if that's just one thing, McCarthy goes and all his coaches go. Is that one thing, or is that each separate?
Sure. Yeah, that's one. Okay. So I mean, all right. So like looking at this, how bad do you think the Packers record would be for that to actually be realistic? Like that? Yes, that's what you do. Maybe that's what I would do. But do you think that that's likely to happen?
That's a good question. Now, this is he's playing out the last year of his contract, right?
No, he's got another year next year.
I was going to say he'd never do a lame duck, and the Packers would never do a lame duck.
Okay, we know what this team will do, because they're all about comfort and normalcy, and they are used to the guys around them, and they're just used to the everyday grind that they go through, which obviously right now they're grinding really, really, really hard.
Well, I really think they value loyalty and continuity over.
There you go. Yeah.
Above all else.
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to happen.
I think if they have a losing record, the chances of it would be really, really high that he would. But I mean, let's put it this way. Say they end up 7-8-1 or whatever with a losing record. Chances would be really good. If they, and I hate to say this, but if they ended up 500, I think his chances would be pretty good of staying. It's that much. And that just goes to the, the whole stupid setup with Murphy and Ball and Gutekunst and McCarthy. It's just an asinine setup. Apparently,
I think 7-8-1 he stays.
I've been bouncing around on this topic every week because it seems like that's just the way things are going. But so the management, Goot, Russ Ball, Mark Murphy came into this year with a roster that they were 100% happy with, right?
I don't believe that. They might have said that, but I don't believe. I think if anything, Gutekunst didn't believe it, but he might have said that.
Well, let's just say, for example, that I'm not going to say, for example, they came into this year happy with what they had. Before they played a regular season game, they were content and happy with what they had. Okay. So that was their expectation coming into the year. Here we sit 8 games through. They're 3-4-1. Is this what they envisioned this team was going to do? Is this what they were thinking that this team was capable of?
No.
Did they envision that this offense would actually be the juggernaut? That this offense would actually take this team down and not the defense?
No, they didn't believe that. Because if they, if they did believe that, I mean, to your point, if they go, well, this roster is good enough to be 3-4-1, right now, then they're fucking idiots and they have no business being in the positions they're in. So you'd have to think they think they were good enough to compete or be, at least in the compete and be in, first or second place in the division. So I look at it as, and I'm going to go through things that are trying to go through it logically. I mean, Rodgers hurting his knee did not help things on basically the first quarter, the first game of the year. I honestly don't know how much that affected the team until this, we'll say New England. I just don't know. How do you quantify that? Was it as bad as we thought? Was it not as bad as we thought? It may have been really bad, and they weren't letting people know. I still stand by the fact that almost every other team, if their quarterback suffered that injury, they would have shut him down for 6 weeks. The Packers did not shut him down because they know and they knew that if they shut him down, how bad the team would be.
Right.
That's the reason they didn't shut him down. Now, the team is built, I don't want to say solely around Rodgers, but a lot around Rodgers. It's not bad if you build your team a lot around a really good quarterback, but you can't build the whole damn thing around one piece where if you pull that little, that piece out, the whole thing comes down. But I'm telling you, that's why he kept playing.
No doubt.
They'd be in the hunt. They'd be in the hunt for the number one pick potentially without Rodgers playing.
Yeah, no doubt. Sure.
No doubt.
They'd be San Francisco.
Okay. So what you're saying is, and I think we all three believe this, that this team's success is ridden on the back of Aaron Rodgers, right?
Sure.
No doubt.
Okay. So you go into this season and you have an all-pro left tackle. You have a decent left guard. You have a above average center. You have a below average right guard. And you have an average right tackle when he's healthy, which Bulaga is typically not healthy. So, okay, if your season is predicated on Aaron Rodgers leading this team, why in the hell would you have a Justin McCray starting at right guard? Why the hell would you not have a viable tackle as a backup? Because you know that your tackles, especially on Bulaga's case, that he's going to go down eventually, and you're going to have to go a few games with a tackle to fill in for him. Now, last night that happened. Bulaga went out. I think it was the end of the first quarter or beginning of the second quarter, and Jason Spriggs came in. And what did they do? They put their best pass rusher over Spriggs, and Flowers got a lot of pressure just just by rushing. He didn't do anything great. He just rushed, and Spriggs had a tough time containing him. Whether
How
it was
good is
rush,
Spriggs? I can't honestly remember, and this is the memory thing.
he was, when we traded up in the second round. I think it was like 10 to 12 spots to get him at number 47, somewhere around there. We traded up to get him, and pre-draft, I remember reading about him because when they drafted him, I was like, who the hell is this? And I went back and read all the pre-draft stuff. And I mean, everybody was talking about him being the next Mark Colombo, who was an offensive tackle, just retired from the Cowboys. Now he's their offensive line coach. He was a pretty solid offensive tackle throughout his career, dealt with a lot of injuries, but when he was healthy, he was, I would say below a Pro Bowl level, but a very above average tackle. They were comparing him to him. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm down with that because that's what we need, and so the capital it took to get him, we were investing on the fact that he was going to be probably the next right tackle or left tackle, depending on how things panned out, but most likely right tackle when Bulaga's contract ended.
Excuse me.
Sure. So there were a lot of expectations placed on him. Now, was it Ted Thompson doing what I call overdrafting on a guy? Talent wise, no. He was a star at Indiana. I mean, he was one of the better offensive linemen to ever come through the program. Mm-hmm. So how he has transformed here to in a below average player on the fringes of actually making a roster is almost a detriment, and it's almost a tie back to the coaching staff somehow not getting the most out of him and not coaching him correctly, which is shocking because James Campen, to me, is one of the better offensive line coaches in the league. And the fact that he couldn't get more out of him, because Campen has quite a record with the linemen.
Sure. He's a good coach.
Right. So what is that? I mean, did he get beat where, your tackles typically are like a relief pitcher. They're on an island. They come in really, unique situations where they're all on an island trying to protect their quarterback. And when he came into the league, he was getting beat quite often. So did that affect his mind? Did his confidence level get shaken? I would have to say that it had to happen because it wasn't talent wise, because the talent's there. He's got good feet. He's got good balance. But he just puts himself out of position all the time because he overthinks everything. The game just has not slowed down for him. So, I don't know. Obviously, he's not the answer. So it's another one of those, on your roster, another one of those positions that really needs to be upgraded significantly because Brian Bulaga is not coming back. We are going into this offseason with no right tackle. We're going into this offseason with no right guard.
And this is where I think giving Gutekunst more time would be good because we all know exactly what Ted would do. He'd bring in an undrafted free agent, or that's basically what he'd do. He would never bring in or trade or sign a free agent of any consequence of that. So, like I firmly believe that based on what I've seen, Gutekunst is going to set fire to this roster, and it needs to be set. And I'm fine. At first when he traded Clinton Dix and Ty Montgomery, I was like, yeah, they need to go. And then when I saw what they got, I was like, but then I'm like, you know what? He did well to get a 4th rounder for Clinton Dix, and he did freaking well to get a 7th rounder for Ty Montgomery. Those players needed to go, and Ted would never get rid of those guys. There's no chance. So I think he's going to, like I said, he's really going to chop up this roster, and it needs to. His draft looks pretty good. I mean, you have this perfect storm in a way of the past few years where Ted had 3 consecutive terrible drafts, did nothing else to improve the roster. And the coaching staff, you look, they still relied on Dom Capers. They finally get canned his ass. He should have been let go years ago. There's just this confluence of things that have been, festering, if you will. And you could say the last thing that's festering right now is McCarthy. Could say that.
I sat down this morning as I'm eating breakfast, getting ready for work, and I just had this epiphany of like this wave that came across me, and I'm like, what are the Packers' issues? and I wrote them down, and they were 12 issues. I think we've touched a few of these, but 12 issues on my mind what's going on with this team. Number one, this team is undisciplined and dysfunctional, which then that should be on the shoulders of Mike McCarthy. Mm-hmm. Number two, Mike McCarthy keeps saying, quote, "We need to get better," unquote. Yeah. I'm to the point where, like, when will this happen? Can we count on them playing better next week if the same issues labor this team week after week after week? Are we going to get better? I don't know. I don't see it. I've heard that for 8 weeks now. Number three, another Mike McCarthyism. Mike McCarthy states week after week that the team had a good week of practice leading up to the game. So if we're practicing so well, why is the team lacking execution on game day? Because doesn't practice make perfect? I mean, isn't that the old adage, you know? Number four, the Packers are the worst team in the league regarding time management. The play clock is consistently being run down to zero.
You're not kidding on that. And Rodgers is failing on that too, unless if they're putting too much on Rodgers.
That's Rodgers.
Well, it could be too. I was reading somewhere, this is interesting, where, you know, Rodgers might be being a babysitter out there for the new guys like Graham and whoever, and these rookies too. And it's like, he can't do everything, you know. Right. Maybe there is an element of the coaching there, but also him as well.
Okay, here's where the coaching staff comes into play, because in the third quarter, we call a timeout because the play clock ran.
Oh my God, I remember that.
And we came out of the timeout, we came out of commercial, and we had to call another timeout because Marquez Valdez-Scantling didn't know the play. Yeah. Are you flipping kidding me? Where is the coaching staff? Where is the position coach that is saying, okay, this is what you're going to do on this play? I mean,
that's embarrassing. That's
where the coaching aspect comes into it. That was a coaching blunder, and that should never happen. So shame on them. Shame on them. Yeah. Number five, I'm going to call it Rodgers here. Rodgers is an absolute hypocrite to me right now, because remember when the season we got into the OTAs, and right before the OTAs, the Packers let Alex Van Pelt go, right? And Rodgers came out and he basically said that he was hurt that the Packers did not confide in him about keeping his quarterback's coach. Then all of a sudden we get into the season, and then he says, "I'm just the QB." So what is it, Aaron? What are you to this team? What do you want to be? He's all over the place. And to me, he's an absolute hypocrite, because he wants to be involved, and then he is just the quarterback. What is it? I don't freaking know.
He's a cash cow.
There you go. And he's living well right now. We talked about this a little bit. Number six, the Packers are so reliant on Rodgers and provided an average offensive lineman to protect him. That is not good roster management. When you have an investment, you protect the investment. Number seven, Rodgers has no rhythm. He lacks touch. He misses open receivers. He audibles out of way too many plays for passes downfield. In years past, I don't remember when Rodgers would attack a 6-man front with passes designed for 10, 15-yard routes downfield. I've never seen that. If Tom Brady is presented with a 6-man front, he's fucking running the ball. He's handing the ball off. You know, and that's why last night's game was so significant, because we saw a stark contrast. We've been building Rodgers up to be the GOAT, and honestly, he's not the GOAT right now. Tom Brady definitely lives up to that adage. You know,
Tom Brady didn't play well yesterday. I'll say that, but
he didn't. But he managed the team well. Yeah, he managed the offense well. He didn't turn the ball over. He managed them in manageable positions and kept that team in the ball game.
He didn't turn the ball over, although Rodgers didn't turn the ball over either.
And Rodgers only has one interception the whole year, so you can't say that he is careless with the ball. He's not.
Oh, he is when he fumbles. How many losses he had?
Right. And I mean, that was one thing that is very hard to understand, because in years past, he could always sense the pass rush coming up behind him. This year, I don't know what it is, but he wants that last millisecond to try to make a play. Like, he's just so desperate to make a play. You know, he's like looking for, an acceptance letter that he's just not getting it. And he's trying to milk every play out to the last millisecond to try to make something happen. And in that respect, I feel sorry for him. Number 8, the Packers are purely average in the trenches. The offensive line cannot block consistently. The pass rush is non-existent unless we blitz. You need to be above average in both of these areas to win and be a successful football team, and we're not above average in either one.
Yeah, where I really agree that we're like, we talk about roster management and that McCarthy, well, maybe not McCarthy, but Gutekunst and Murphy and whoever and all that saying we're good enough, we're good with this roster. Mm-hmm. If they were good with this defensive line and outside linebackers, they're delusional. Mm-hmm. If they really felt that they were in good shape there, then they are delusional, because right now they got to have the worst front, the worst outside line. They might have the worst outside linebackers in the league. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the worst front, because Mike Daniels is, he's above average, I would say. Kenny Clark's looking really good. Yeah. But the outside linebackers, and those are the guys who bring the pressure. If they were good with Perry and Matthews, they'd have no business managing a roster.
Right. And
they did nothing to improve the roster. And they kept saying all this crap about Reggie Gilbert. I kept hearing Reggie Gilbert left, right, and center. And that was such a Ted thing. Mm-hmm. Some undrafted guy, he was off the practice squad or whatever. And I'm like, please. Mm-hmm. Enough of that.
Right. Number 9. I think it's pretty obvious that there is some type of rift between McCarthy and Rodgers. McCarthy says that they're in harmony, they're in sync, they're in a good relationship, and then Rodgers will kind of make these underhanded comments to the media that suggest otherwise. So
he's the king of the passive aggressive post conference. Right.
So I think there's an obvious issue there with philosophy differences between the two, and that's becoming a huge issue with the offensive cohesiveness, because they're not working together. Number 10, I also have to question the relationship between Mike McCarthy and Goot. Is there an issue with this team management on the field when your GM trades malcontents like Clinton Dix and Montgomery, and your head coach allows those guys to continue that attitude? So it took Goot to finally step in and say, you know what, this is unhealthy. We have to get rid of the plague. What did Mike McCarthy do about it? He kept starting. He kept playing, these guys, and didn't sit them down. And Dix the whole offseason and during the season has been saying, this is my last year, and he didn't do anything about it. So,
you wonder how much say McCarthy has in the roster. I mean, Good obviously has the most, but how much does Mike get? I would love to be in these meetings with Murphy, Ball, Gutekunst, and McCarthy. It would just be, it'd be a treat, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. It'd be buffoonery is what it would be.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
A couple more here. Number 11. We've talked about this multiple times. The team is paying dearly for Ted Thompson's draft blunders from 2013 to 2000.
3 in a row.
The result is an average roster with average talent and no difference makers, and the quality of depth is definitely lacking. And the last one, you mentioned this, Andy. The team depends very highly on high price guys like Nick Perry and Clay Matthews, and they are obviously not getting a return on this investment that they put towards them. And I just brought this up too when you were talking about Perry is playing safe to collect that active per game roster bonus money. And that's a problem because he's playing for himself. And he's not playing for the team. And that somehow in this offseason that needs to be rectified. I know the cap ramifications are significant if they were to let him go, but they got to figure something out, whether they got to send him to counseling to become more of a team player. I don't know what it is.
Counseling. Sorry.
But I don't know what can be done because they're tied into him very, very financially, and there's not a lot that they can do. So he has all the marbles.
That one goes back to Ted too, because I mean, you're right. I agree with what you're saying, but that goes back to Ted too, because he took a square peg and tried to put him in a round hole, which have been way too many of these fucking players. Perry is a 4-3 end.
Yep.
He is not an outside linebacker. And we knew it when they drafted him. They drafted him and they changed his position. They drafted Demarius Randall and they changed his position. They drafted this guy over here and they did Ty Montgomery. Quit changing guys' positions. It's horseshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, I like what I'm seeing from Gutekunst for the most part. Like I said, still early. He didn't do anything to upgrade the pass rush. I don't agree with what he did there. I don't know what he could have done or what he had in mind, but I'll give him another year, another draft before I really give him a full analysis. But you can tell he does not like Ted's draft or Ted's roster.
Right, and then that's why I think we need to stick to your point that we need to give him. I would say at least another 2 years minimum, because when Goot was handed this roster, he was handed a flat tire. Literally, I mean, this roster was underwhelming except for Aaron Rodgers, and right now Aaron Rodgers is completely underwhelming and playing less than the quarterback that he has been in the past.
Is Ted still a scout with the team? Isn't he?
Yeah.
That's such a fucking Packers move
much
too.
A pencil pusher, though. I mean, it sounds like he can't even go out to, to meet scouts and players at the combines and stuff like that. It sounds like he can't even do that. So, yeah, you're right, though. Is that a typical Packer move where they just feel sorry for the guy and give him an office and a pencil? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know enough about that, but when I heard he was just basically a scout now, I'm like, okay, whatever. But yeah. So no, I mean, those issues, like I said, I agree with everything you said. I think that, some of the hard part, I mean, you look at a lot of rosters and in the NFL, and a lot of them are pretty average. Everything regresses to the mean, right? I mean, you have your exceptions. You have obviously New England, who's just, they're a freaking machine with everything what they do. But then you have these teams that kind of come, for a couple years. I mean, look at the Rams, but also look at Kansas City. That quarterback, Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
He's making Rodgers look slow, which is unbelievable. But those two teams, they're kind of peaking, Yep. But are they going to peak and then kind of go away? The league is cyclical, is kind of what I'm saying. So there's elements of that. But most other teams, to your point, would not let things fester. The Packers let things fester. And everybody knew it. But they did nothing. And you wonder, why did they do nothing? I just don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah, that's something that Ted Thompson would have to answer himself, because I think we could sit here on a round table and discuss this all night, and we probably couldn't come up with the synopsis of what he was thinking, because he was thinking in a different level, But I mean, we have to give Good a lot of credit.
I think Ted always looked 3 years down the road. He didn't look 1 year or 2 years. He looked 3 years down the road with everything.
Yeah,
he never looked at what was in front of his face ever. No.
But I mean, you can look at and there was a scout, either on ESPN or the Green Bay Press Gazette. I can't remember who interviewed this scout, but he said that Ted Thompson, after 2012, just seemed to lose his ability to see talent. And
well, keep in mind, who did we lose after the Super Bowl a couple of years? You had John Schneider, you had John Dorsey, you had Reggie McKenzie. All three of them left. That's a talent drain that was never filled.
Right. And it was all put on Ted Thompson.
Yeah, and I mean, shame on Ted for not trying to get other guys in there, but Ted was a cheapo. He probably didn't want to bring in anybody.
He was a cheapo, but he also had Elliot Wolf there, who's had his father had a huge pedigree here.
Where is Elliot Wolf, by the way?
He's in Cleveland.
Is he doing well there, or what's he doing?
Director of Player Pro Personnel.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're making a lot of changes there, so they're very active in that trying to balance that roster and make them competitive. They're doing everything they can.
Yeah, I hear you. But I mean, as far as the rest of the season, I think the season's pretty much done too. I mean, they have to basically go undefeated to make the playoffs, right? Right. It's the only chance. And they are not going undefeated. Sorry, not happening. And they suffered more injuries. They suffered like 3 decent injuries last night too.
Yep. Yeah, it sounds like Geronimo Allison is going to be out the year with.
Yeah, he has some kind of core issue.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin King is probably not going to play this week.
And that weird. I mean, I know that Martinez came back. Did you see that freaking injury?
That was ugly.
And that was just a shitty luck injury.
Right. He was trying to pull up so he didn't hit Brady and get a 15-yard penalty. It was shitty luck.
But it was Packers luck is what it was.
Right.
Okay, so is that the end? you guys never did answer my question about
the 5 things.
Yeah, and it was an arbitrary 5, but we got through 1.
Well, I think we could still do some of that. I mean, I can. Well, Jeremy had the 12 things.
I know that was way better than my 5. So now I feel like that was just stupid.
Part of it too, it's like, okay, so say, for instance, they gut everything. Say Gutekunst, Cans, McCarthy, the entire coaching staff, and they essentially start fresh with a brand new coaching staff. And I'm talking defense, offense, special teams. I mean, I don't know what the chances are of them going gangbusters the first year,
That's the problem.
I would say it takes 2 years, I would think,
Yep.
So that kind of sets you behind from that perspective. And you got to hit on the right, regime. Say you bring another guy in and he's a piece of shit, then you're really screwed, So there's I think there's, a lot of risk. A lot of reward there too, but there's a lot of risk. I mean, everybody keeps talking about, McDaniels. Now, he learned his lesson and all that. And I'm like, who the fuck knows?
Right.
I have no idea. I mean, who's a good candidate out there to be a coach for the Packers?
I mean, my first guy would be McDaniels. I just love his creativity on offense, and I think that he's young. He gets along with the players.
But he burned the Broncos to the ground. Remember that?
I don't think he was ready.
He drafted Tim Tebow in the first round. I'll never forget that. In the first round. Oh my God.
Right, but that was pre-New England, pre-Bill Belichick. He's learned from the best, and I think he has an understanding now. If he were to get back into the head coaching field, I think he has a maturity level now and an understanding to be more successful in the right situation. I just don't see that he would want to leave New England. I think he has a very cushy situation there.
I think he's going to be taken over, from what I understand. Belichick's going to retire pretty soon.
Could be. Yeah. Yep.
So I couldn't tell you another. I mean, I love what the coaches of the Rams are doing. Andy Reid, he's something else too. I mean, he's kind of what he's doing is pretty incredible, because he's an old hat. He's older than McCarthy, I bet. But look at what he's doing with that offense. Damn. I don't know. I don't know any other good names. And then you got to bring in, offense, defense, special teams. You got to bring in a coach that's going to get all that stuff right. So, but maybe the Packers are kind of scared of that too, as an organization, about doing that. But,
well, if you're scared to make decisions, then you're in the wrong profession. This team in the last 4 games is 7-12-1. If you're okay with that, and you just think going into every season by, doing the same thing over and over and over again is going to get better, it's not going to in this day and age. I mean,
I agree.
The defenses have caught up to this offense. I think you've mentioned that many times, Andy, and I'm definitely seeing that now. I don't see a coaching staff that is getting across to players anymore. And that to me is blatantly obvious, because week in and week out, this team is making the same mistakes that kill themselves, that shoot themselves in the foot from actually possibly beating a team that they shouldn't beat, like the past 2 weeks. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that we had a chance against the Rams and New England, at least amongst the prognosticators out there. but we were in them. But we shot ourselves in the foot against two good teams, and that's what's going to happen when you do that. You lose those games. So these two games really showed a lot about where this team is at, and to me, it hasn't. But they're just strictly an average team, you know.
Yeah, they are. They are. They're average.
If that's what the goal of this organization is, then I don't want to be around to see it, because I want to win championships. I'll bandwagon over to New England because I want to see this team compete for the Super Bowl every single year. So, you know, if I guess it's a come to Jesus moment, you know, where Goot has to sit down and say, okay, what do I envision for this team? And obviously, if he's a general manager, he's obviously thinking, I want to win the Super Bowl. I get that. But are we going to win the Super Bowl with what we currently have here? And the answer is no. The answer is no. McCarthy's in his 13th year. You know, I've said this before too. Bill Walsh has said that, you know, coaches in the NFL have a 10-year shelf life. Once they get beyond that, they turn into stale bread. And I think we're at that level right now. The same message is being relayed over and over and over again, and the players lose that. They don't grasp onto that. The same old tired story every single time. So this team needs an infusion of different philosophy, and they started that in the off season. It might have been very unorthodox because not many teams start by releasing or, you know, getting rid of your GM and then, you know, basically giving them an office here still, and then keeping your head coach and then bringing in a defensive coordinator. It's very unorthodox in how they approach this offseason.
It's stupid.
Right.
If you ask me, it's just stupid.
You know, so if I'm sitting there and I'm Goot, I mean, if I have the authority, or at least if I don't have the authority, I'm going to Murphy and I am writing a report that says this is why we need to make this change right now, because this, and this. And if Murphy says, you know what, I don't believe you, then Goot's like, all right, I'm done. Because this is not going to, this path that we're on right now is not going to get us to the promised land. We are not guaranteed to have a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers after he retires or leaves this game. It's not a guarantee. So what we have right now is something special with that quarterback, and we're totally not getting the most out of him. And we're not getting our money's worth, obviously. So this is what we need to do. We need to go out and hire an offensive genius. We need to hire a coach that's going to hold the team accountable. And we need a GM, you, Murphy, an owner, whatever, that's going to hold these people underneath you accountable, because you want everybody to come through you with everything. So this is the time where you need to be a man and put your man pants on. And frickin' make some tough decisions here.
You remember what I said about this season? This was probably 3 games ago, though, but I said this season reminds me a lot of 2005, Sherman's last year. It is playing out very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened after that was the whole thing got shit canned.
Mm-hmm.
You had an quote aging quarterback who was still talented.
Mm-hmm.
You had a dearth of talent. You had a GM who came in and knew he wasn't going to keep Sherman. You wonder if Gutekunst came in, he's like, I'm going to keep McCarthy. There's so many similarities to that season right now.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And they did blow that up.
Yep.
You remember?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. That's about all I got, boys.
Elliot?
Elliot? What happened to him?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. What happened to you?
I don't know.
we all sound so down. We're just like, what happened to you? Nothing.
You know what? I was down through the whole thing until I heard "Put Your Man Pants On." That needs to be the show title. That's the title. We're done.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good point.
That's the best one that
ever happened. Murphy, put your man pants on. Good one. It's very good.
Nice. Yep. All right, so we got to run the table. Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.
Alrighty, boys.
Podcast.
I know, right?